Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Shura, and this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. Robert Harding, Justin Ritzel joining me. We're going to pick some NFL games. Quick recap of last week. Justin was our weekly champion. He was 3-1. Robert and I were each 2-2. And for the season, Robert is our leader at 28-25. I am one game back at 27-26. And Justin is one game behind me at 26-27. It's only two games separate the three of us. It's another thrilling race to the finish here as we down the stretch of the NFL regular season. Our first game is the Thursday night game. That's tomorrow. 49ers are 3-point favorites on the road at the Seahawks. Seahawks disappointing last week in that loss to Carolina. The Niners, I mean, wow, what a job they did destroying the Buccaneers. Although, really, should we be surprised? I mean, the Buccaneers are not arguably, they are the worst division leader right now, no doubt about it. They're fortunate to play in the NFC South. So, look, Brock Purdy, I know he's not feeling too good, but I think the weapons at his disposal, and then especially the 49ers defense, the way they've been playing, I like them to go on the road, go up I-5 from San Francisco to Seattle and cover the 3 over the Seahawks. Robert, who do you like?
I like the Niners too. I think Brock has been playing pretty good at quarterback for the Niners. With McCaffrey there, he's still doing good. Deebo Samuel, obviously a loss for them, but they've had to deal with these injuries and stuff before. With that defense, I mean, you gotta feel good about your chances week in and week out anyway. Interesting fact about the Seahawks is that they've lost their last 3 games, 3 home games. And of course, they're hosting the Niners in this one. I think it'll be 4 in a row. I think the Niners should be able to win comfortably here. The Seahawks have kind of fallen off here as the season has gone on. Geno Smith has played okay, but they've been bit by the injury bug too. So that's led to some struggles, and I think it's going to be a tough one for them tomorrow night.
Justin, who do you like?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, and this is the case with the Seahawks and the Giants, two teams that were not expected to be good. Had a first month and a half where they were excellent, and now they're coming back down to earth and playing more like the teams we expected them to be all along. And you're seeing the cream of the crop really rise here. The 49ers, without Deebo Samuel, are still a way better team than Seattle. I don't care who their quarterback is. I think Kyle Shanahan has proven, whether it's Jimmy G or Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard, that offense is just so good. They'll move the ball against anyone, and the Seahawks defense isn't good. So I feel pretty comfortable with the Niners here.
All right, our next game, my Miami Dolphins at Robert's Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 7-point favorites. Justin, I'll let you go on first on this one. Who are you picking?
Speaking of fraudulent teams, the Miami Dolphins, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Tua debate that's been going on for like 2 years now, it's just annoying. From the guy he was like thought to be the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. This year he puts up some nice stats, and we're talking about him as not we, but the collective NFL media is talking about him as having this great year and all that. And I think Tua is fine. He's just one of those quarterbacks who, when in the right situation, and there's a lot of guys like this, in the right situation with skilled receivers, yeah, he can look good. I still think he's limited. I'm not impressed with his arm, and that Miami team, they benefited from that Miami weather when these two teams played the first time around, and I think it's going to be in reverse this time. I don't see the Dolphins as a team that can, in cold weather, in potential snow, really do what they need to do on offense. And their defense is kind of whatever to me. So I think the Bills, even though it seems like in Bills fandom, the sky is falling every week, and you got people asking Josh Allen if the offense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. I think it's all nonsense. Their offense has still been top 5 in the league this year. So you didn't put up 30 points against the Jets. Okay, the Jets have a great defense, so I'm not too worried about that. I don't think Miami has a great defense. The Bills are fine. They're still a Super Bowl contender and the AFC favorite in my eyes. And I think they're going to take care of business here at home.
So they'll cover.
Yeah.
All right. Robert, geez, who would you pick?
Well, let me tell a story. Last week, 50-degree weather in Los Angeles, and the Dolphins needed these to get by against the Chargers. And of course,
Ooh, a prop.
they lose.
That's a rarity.
They lose. A little cool breeze bothers them. Well, they're in for it this weekend. It's supposed to snow. It's supposed to be windy. Oh boy, I'm salivating at this one. When they're away from the Hard Rock sauna, this team has not been a good road team. If you look at the AFC East, they're the only team in the AFC East, and all of them have winning records, to have a losing record on the road. And you look at some of those games that they've won. One of them is that big comeback against the Ravens, Chris, which, hey, give them credit. The Ravens choked and the Dolphins took advantage. And then the two other ones came against the Lions and the Bears. Obviously we know that the Lions have been pretty tough out this year. They're on a bit of a streak here, but the Bears, they're not that good. And the Dolphins gave up 32 today. So, this is a team that, they don't have the great record on the road. Tua's been struggling a little bit lately. The injury bug has bitten their top 2 receivers. Something's going on with Jalen Waddle and his leg, and that guy hasn't really produced much. Hill, hurt his ankle against the Chargers. I'm sure that he'll play, but it clearly was bothering him against the Chargers. Now the Bills, they've, a win is a win in the NFL, and it hasn't been pretty. I have my criticisms of, not Josh Allen, but, this offense. But, they have figured out ways to win. And the defense, after kind of a bit of a lull there, a lot of it was due to injury. I think that they're back to form. They've really played well, especially in the last couple of weeks. So I think that they'll keep it going against the Dolphins. Again, Saturday could be tough. A tough environment. It's going to be a tough environment anyway for the Dolphins because, it'll be less than 70 degrees. So, I think that that's going to be tough for them. But just all of those factors that are working against them, of course, I'm taking the Bills. Unlike my friend here, the Dolphins fan who will pick against his team. I have picked my team every week this season, win or lose. And I'm still in the lead in this little contest that we have. A loyal fan, number 1 in the standings. What more could I ask for? Give me the Bills again. Give me the Bills the rest of the season. It doesn't matter. We're both going to win.
Wow, it really takes a lot to go out on a limb there to pick the Bills every week when really they've been favored every single week. They've been an underdog at all this season?
Look, they've been favored, but they've also been favored by enormous spreads that a lot of people, would pick against them because that would be the smart play.
But they haven't been the dog.
No.
They have not been the dog, though. So let's get that straight. Second of all, I did pick Miami last week. Okay.
Last week.
Well, yeah, I did. And I picked him the week before that too. So don't give me this like, oh yeah, he's not a loyal fan garbage. Okay.
Twice out of 14 weeks.
That's a bunch of BS. Okay. Look, I pick with my head, not my heart. Okay. And my head says, yeah, this is not going to be pretty. I mean, look, you want to talk about the weather. I get it. Yeah, I get it. Look, First of all, it's not like all these players grew up and lived their entire lives in Florida. Okay. A lot of them have lived in other places, cold weather climates, and they understand the cold weather and they can handle it. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be cold for them because they're not used to the cold weather like the Bills are. I give you that. Okay. And I understand Bills fans and the Bills themselves have been looking forward. They've had this game circled on their calendar for so long and everything. I get it. But unfortunately, right now, the Dolphins are playing like absolute dog do. I mean, it's just pathetic. Tua couldn't have hit the broadside of a barn last week. Couldn't have hit water if he fell out of a boat last week, okay? I mean, what was he, like 3 of 17 at one point? I mean, how do you do that
10,
in the
10 for 28. 10
yeah,
for 28.
how do you do that in the modern day NFL? It's incredible, okay? Now, look, let's give the Chargers credit. Chargers had a great defensive game plan. I've been watching all these videos all week of what the Chargers did and stuff. But you know something? Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins boy genius, has to make adjustments, okay? And I like to think that he's smart enough because he's a Yale grad that he can make adjustments in game, okay? And maybe make some changes where the Dolphins are doing some things. I will say one thing. One welcome change would be running the ball more. Look, Jeff Wilson Jr. got hurt last week. He's got a bad hip. He's going to try to play on Saturday night, which I think would be good because Raheem Mostert, to me, is definitely not the running back he was earlier in the season. I don't know whether he's hurt, but he's not hitting the holes as fast. Jeff Wilson, that guy, he's a good running back. When he's in his groove, he is as solid a running back as there is in the NFL. Okay, not Derrick Henry, but he's a solid running back. And he had a couple good runs last week before he hurt that hip. So if I'm the Dolphins, the best way to counteract the Bills, especially the weather, is to run the football, run it down their throats. Channel Ricky Williams circa 2002, circa Reggie Bush circa 2011. Run the football, run it a lot where you don't have to throw. You're not going to be able to throw 20 and 30-yard outs or down the middle or anything like that because the wind is going to be too intense. Okay. If you want to show some throw passes over the middle or on the sidelines, great. Yeah. Okay. You got a heater. That's great. Whatever. Okay.
They're going to lose. Who cares? Make your
pick.
That
being said, the Dolphins defense is not playing as well as they should. Although I thought they did an admirable job against the Chargers last week because they did keep it close. And remember, for all those yards that Justin Herbert threw, you know how many touchdown passes he had last week? 1. Okay. He wasn't that great. He wasn't lighting up the scoreboard. Okay. He just threw for a lot of yards. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I'm picking against my Fins because you know something, maybe they will come back and pull this thing off. And then Robert can make fun of me for picking against them. I'll gladly take that. So
I won't make fun of you for picking your team, which you haven't done for most of the season. I admire you for going with your team, standing by them, no matter what the spread is. They could be, 20-point underdogs. You're sticking with them. Good for you, Chris. I admire that. There's a free heater in it for you.
Oh boy. Hey, look, if Miami can run the football on Saturday night, if Tua can be effective, big if in my opinion, and the defense can actually, get the Josh Allen. I mean, Bradley Chubb, Dolphins traded a first-round pick for this guy, and I haven't heard his name in a while. He hasn't done jack anything, and they gave this guy a contract extension, okay? Melvin Ingram, very good at the beginning of the season. Not done a lot lately. The Dolphins' best pass rusher so far the last few weeks, Jalen Phillips. This second-year player has been incredible. He's been getting the bulk of the pressure on the quarterback. And Christian Wilkins, arguably, I think, if not the best defensive tackle in the NFL, definitely in the conversation is one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. Yeah, he's going to the Pro Bowl. I don't care what the hell the Pro Bowl. I don't care if it's flag football.
That means a lot these days.
Rural football. Yeah. I'm telling you, Christian Wilkins is going to be up there as one of the best defensive tackles in the league. That guy's having a great season. If those things can happen, then they got a shot, but we'll see. All right, moving on to our next game. Tennessee Titans, arguably one of the most disappointing teams of the last few weeks, besides my Miami Dolphins, hitting the road, going to the aforementioned Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers are 3-point favorites. Look, Titans, I mean, that was a bad loss to the Jaguars last week at home. I mean, really, really bad. Chargers, look, they've been banged up, but boy, they found a way last week. I think last week's win was one of those. I think you look at this like the point of the season where like, hey, we turned things around. Long story short, I'm picking the Chargers to cover the -3 and to beat the Titans and cover the spread. Justin, who you picking?
Yeah, this is tough. I feel like we got. I mean, the Titans. Every time we pick them, they seem to burn me. They look like world beaters against Green Bay a few weeks ago on Thursday night, and their defense had, up to that point, had really solidified itself, and they've proven to be, just this tough, stout unit, and that really hasn't shown up ever since people started talking about them as, maybe a bit of a, sleeper team heading into the AFC playoffs. They've had some turmoil, like in their front office. They fired their general manager a few weeks ago after AJ Brown just totally emasculated that entire team. That was a dumb trade that I still don't really understand what happened last offseason. But Titans are a weird team, and that makes sense because the AFC South is a weird division. Chargers are a weird team too. I think this is a tough line for me. I don't really know what to expect out of either team. So when all else fails in these situations, I tend to just side with the better quarterback. And I think it's pretty obvious which team has the better quarterback in this matchup. Even a Dolphins fan like Chris especially would know, never bet on Ryan Tannehill. So with that said, I'm going to take the Chargers and Justin Herbert.
All right. Robert?
Yeah, this is Titans are on a 3-game losing streak here. They were looking good there for a while and then ran into the Bengals and a team like the Jaguars. I mean, that game was, frustrating to watch. They also have a loss to the Eagles in there. So, two of those losses you could say, they lost to teams that are better than they are. But that loss to the Jaguars is a real head scratcher. And I think a red flag of sorts that, the Jaguars have, I think, a similar type offense to the Chargers, in that they have a quarterback that can sling it. They've got some good weapons on the outside. The Chargers, I think, have better weapons. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are healthy again, and we saw the difference that made against the Dolphins. And I think I'm going to ride with the Chargers in this one. I think the Titans are kind of on this downhill slide here, and the firing of their GM suggests that there's something going on with that team. A power struggle mid-season that probably shouldn't be making those kinds of decisions now. But yeah, I think the Chargers, they haven't played that great in recent weeks, but when you look at their record anyway, I mean, they do have 3 losses in their last 5. But when you look at the teams that they've lost to, they've played close games against the Niners and the Chiefs. So I think, I'm going to go with the Chargers at home here. I think that they can win by at least 1 score.
All righty, our last game, the New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. Commanders are hefty 4.5-point home favorites. This is one of those games, it's like, it looks so easy. The Giants have not played well, but it's a division game. The Commanders had a bye last week. It'd be so easy to pick the Giants to cover the 4.5 because that is a pretty hefty spread for this game, because you really want to think these teams are kind of evenly matched. But that being said, I think the Commanders are a team on the rise. And as we've mentioned before, the Giants are a team that are on the decline. So with that in mind, I'm going to go with the Commanders, or as Robert calls them, the Commies, to cover the 4.5. I just think that the Commanders are in a better state right now. I mean, I think they like Taylor Heineke as their starting quarterback. They play hard for this guy. The defense is solid, even without Chase Young out for most of the year with injuries. And the Giants just not inspiring right now. Daniel Jones definitely showing that he's probably not going to be the quarterback next season. I know Saquon Barkley's had some injury issues lately, but yeah, I'm going to go with the Commies to cover the 4.5. Justin, who are you picking?
I'm going to go with the Commanders too. What's funny to me is can you imagine sitting back in early September when the season's getting started, and could you imagine knowing that NBC and the NFL was going to flex a New York Giants versus Washington Commies matchup into Sunday Night Football as the game of the week? And, really for these teams, it's going to be kind of a win or go home matchup. If you lose this game, I think, especially in the Giants case, the way they've been sliding, you lose this game, you're going to have a tough time making the playoffs with the way some of these teams that are kind of on the outside looking in the NFC, the way they're shaping up. More on that later when we do our takeaways for me. But yeah, I think the Commanders are just playing more sound football right now. They have a great defensive line, which really has been carrying them. They have a nice 1-2 punch at running back, and Terry McLaurin is a really solid receiver. Heineke, he has his limitations. I don't think he's a long-term answer at quarterback, but for this team, for whatever reason, they seem to play better when he's quarterback, and he makes just enough plays to help win them games, since he took over for Carson Wentz. So, 4.5 is a lot of points for teams that I think are somewhat relatively even, but just the way these two teams are trending, I think you have to go with Washington.
Robert?
I think the Commanders can win this one, but I think the Giants can keep it close enough that they'll cover. And I say that because neither of these teams really has an offense that is, gonna light up the scoreboard. I mean, the Commanders did, surprise some people with that performance against the Eagles, a few weeks back. But that's been kind of the exception this year. If you look at a lot of their games, they're not putting up 30 points a game. And keep in mind that these two teams just played 2 weeks ago and they tied. So that that kind of shows you that where things stand. I mean, I think that's the kind of game that you're going to expect. It probably come down to a field goal. I think the Commies are the better team. I think that they can win, but I think the Giants can keep it close enough. Both these teams aren't going to score a ton of points, so the Giants can keep it close enough that they're in it probably until the end, and then who knows? Maybe they tie again. Maybe the Commies kick a field goal, whatever. But I think it'll be a low-scoring game decided by 3 or less. So going with the Giants to cover.
So Robert, that is the only game that we differ on. We agree on the first 3. You're the only one to differ with us on the last one. So it should be interesting to see what happens. All righty. So takeaways.
Looking forward to
it. For me, I think one of the takeaways is we alluded to it a little bit. Jacksonville and Detroit. These are two teams that have been the doormats of the NFL for so long. And all of a sudden, there are signs of life in those teams. I mean, the Lions have really come on lately, where they're in the wild card conversation, and the Jags. I mean, look, it's unlikely, but they're starting to turn some things around. Trevor Lawrence is actually playing like he was worthy of the number 1 pick last season, and it's kind of nice to see some of these doormats, start playing well. I mean, give their fans some hope, because that's what you want. If you're a Jags or Lions fan, that's what you want. You want hope. And it's nice to see that, after last year's debacle with Urban Meyer, that the Jags have recovered nicely. And like I said, they're showing signs of next year. They could be a contender in the AFC South. And then for the Lions, I mean, look, I think you got to put them up there next season. I mean, they're going to have some nice draft picks from the Rams, and it's going to be fun to see what happens with that. But I think it's nice to see some of these perennial, doormats actually play well and give their fans some hope. So, Robert, your takeaways from Week 14.
Mine focuses on the Cowboys, because this team was really, peacocking around the NFL after that big win against the Colts. But people forget that was really, that was really one quarter, a 1-quarter explosion. That game was close, 21-19, against the Colts of all teams. And then, they went off in the fourth quarter and scored, 33 points or something. Colts made a lot of mistakes and the Cowboys made a lot of big plays. But, then we saw what happened against the Texans. I mean, they were fortunate to come out of there with a win. I mean, the Texans played, pretty good football, I think they got a takeaway there, scored a touchdown. And then, the Cowboys, they were trailing for much of that game. And then, in the final minute, really in the final seconds, they score a touchdown to take the lead. So, I think this is a cautionary tale in the NFL to be careful about, anointing these teams when you look at their resume and it's really not that impressive. They have these moments, but it's not who they consistently are. I think that the team that we saw Sunday with the Cowboys against the Texans, that's more of how they've played this year. That they've gotten some wins, but they've also had some letdowns in different moments. I think a similar team in that mold is the Chiefs. They play the Broncos, and you think that's a game that they should win going away, and they were up 27-0 at one point, and the Broncos made that game very interesting. I think that's another example of the Chiefs usually this time of year is when they kind of shake off that the early season struggles, and they go in the final couple months of the regular season, and they've got it rolling. But as we've seen, they've had their struggles. They lost to the Bengals, one score game against the Broncos when they're clearly the better team. So that, I think that raises some question marks too. But we're winding down in the season here, and I think that the picture is really becoming clear as to who the contenders are and who the pretenders are. Some of those pretenders will make the playoffs, but can they survive the first round? Can they get to the divisional round or even the title game, the conference title games? Might be tougher than people think for some of those teams.
Justin, your takeaways from last week.
Yeah, the Chiefs, Robert, the Chiefs look right for the pick. And to me, I think we went into the season thinking that Bills Chiefs was the certain AFC championship matchup. And it was certainly advertised as such when the two teams played earlier this month, or earlier this season. Mahomes, I don't know, he throws like at least one dumb interception every game, and the defense isn't good. So that's a bad recipe for me. I think it would not shock me if they get knocked out of the playoffs in the wild card round or divisional round. My takeaway is I want to talk about the Lions too. I think that they're an interesting case study because for so long, I think the approach in the NFL, really during this kind of passing boom era of the 2000s and 2010s, that if you were a struggling team, just get a quarterback, get your franchise quarterback, and figure out the rest later. But we've seen so many examples of a young kid right out of college kind of being thrust into a bad situation, and it ruins their careers. I think Justin Fields was he's kind of worked his way out of it and has become a nice prospect, but he was in jeopardy of being one of those guys who was put onto a team that has no talent around him. And quarterback, especially for a young guy, it's the most important position, but it's also the position that you lean on other players the most. You can't do your job unless your offensive line blocks. You can't do your job if your receivers don't catch anything. So the Lions kind of went in the opposite direction. They have built a roster that you look at their receiving group. They have St. Brown, and Williams came back from the ACL last week and had a big touchdown. They've got a nice running back core, nice defensive line. And their offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in football. How often have you been able to say that about the Detroit Lions? Really, I think the question mark moving forward for them is, what do you want to do at the quarterback position? And, a lot of credit belongs to Jared Goff. I think he got traded from the Rams, and very clearly LA didn't think, they had kind of hit their ceiling with him and needed a better arm to reach their goal, which was winning a Super Bowl. And he had a tough year last year in Detroit. No doubt about it. He's come on and really shown that in the right situation, he can be an effective quarterback. He takes a lot of crap I don't think there's much difference between him and someone like Jimmy G, who a lot of people celebrate. These guys are pretty much all the same. You put decent talent around them and they can perform, but don't expect them to carry your franchise to a Super Bowl like a Rodgers or a Brady or, that quality quarterback can do. So, I'm obviously attached to the NFC North. My team has dominated it for the better part of 30 years, going back to when it was the NFC Central. But I think the Lions are that team to me that seems kind of primed to really take over that division and have a nice run here. They're going to have one of the top 3 picks. Coincidentally, it won't be their own. It'll be that Rams pick. And it's a great quarterback class. They are set up perfectly here where they can take one of those top quarterback prospects, have him sit for a year behind Goff, be competent again next year, and then throw in that young quarterback in 2024 and, hit the ground running. I think they're set up for a lot of success here. And unfortunately for a Packers fan, it's a bit of a changing of the guard, seeing the Lions really do all these right things and make all these right moves. I don't think they're going to get into the wild card this year. They got 3 tough road games out of the 4. One of them is at Green Bay, week 18. I think that game is going to be for the last wild card position in the NFC. So that'll be fun. But Lions are trending in the right direction. Who thought we'd say it?
All right. I know it is hard to believe. So, all right, gentlemen, we all set?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Stay warm, Dolphins fans. I've got you covered here.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.